Yeah. Sure. Feel free to spread out there. You look room.
Okay, 6:30. Call the meeting to order. We have 3 regular agenda items today. We have a public hearing on the Zach Hatch Auto Business. And we have the 4-year tree service application and the town of Readfield's fairground project for completeness discussion. So we'll begin with the Hatch Auto application, and it is a public hearing tonight. I don't see, we have no one on Zoom, correct?
I don't see anybody.
No. Is there anyone here other than, than Zach and his members of the public who might want to provide comment? No one. Well, in case someone joins us, because it is a public hearing, I need to ask you just to give a very brief summary, if you could come up to the podium and just give a short description of what you're proposing, and if planning board members have any additional questions, they'll ask them, and we can also talk a bit about the supplemental map that you have provided with the storage location.
Okay. All right, my name is Zachary Hatch. I plan on trying to open Hatch Auto Repair on 846 Main Street. Trying to provide a reasonable shop within town limits so that we can not have to go into town to have service done. I should be able to provide any services needed there, tires, brakes, alignments, in the future AC, pretty much anything that needs to be done to your vehicles.
So we did find the application complete at the last meeting. There had been some pieces of information that had been requested that Mr. Hatch provided. And at the last meeting, we had talked about the location on the property where vehicles would be stored. And there was some conversation about, I guess, parts and non-operating vehicles that might be stored at some point in time.
Which that'll be to a bare minimum anyways.
And so it would be helpful if you could talk to us just for a minute about the site map that you provided with storage locations on it. And what, so this is the piece that came to us, I don't know, last week. And if you could just talk a bit about the locations and also the number of the vehicles that you expect to be stored in those areas.
The amount of vehicles you're asked?
Yeah, you have several, maybe 3 locations.
So the one where it says existing house and it's blacked out, that's where I primarily park my own vehicles.
Your own vehicles.
And then this blacked out section to the right side of that, towards the Newton Road, that's where I try to park the vehicles that are done for customer pickup and that type of stuff. And then out back behind the house and garage, where it really can't be seen as the vehicles waiting to either come in, or if it's a condemned vehicle waiting to be filled with junk metal and hauled away.
Mm-hmm. And can you give us some idea of how many vehicles in each of those areas?
As far out back, probably usually 2 or 3 at most for condemned vehicles, and then customer vehicles waiting to come in, maybe 2 or 3. And then out front, I think I have 6 registered vehicles right now, so that
those are your personal
right.
vehicles.
Yes.
So we're talking 2 or 3 on the right hand location and 2 or 3 to the back of the garage.
Probably
behind the house.
behind the house and garage, you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the largest.
Yeah.
blackout area.
I mean, right now I think there's 4 out there right now. 2 of which are waiting to come in. One's gonna be a big job that waiting to figure out when I'm gonna do it and.
Mhm. Yeah, and I asked because one of the issues that came up that we had talked about a little bit was. Numbers of vehicles and, you know, if. You had a good idea of how many and if you would be comfortable with us including that number that you gave us as a limitation.
Okay, I mean. Yeah, I mean, that's whatever we gotta do, so, yeah,
My only hesitation with that is once you establish a business. There's customers known to just have vehicles towed in that he might know that are coming. Right, it's just the nature of the business
Yeah.
that sometimes you can't predict somebody just having their car dropped off. So
Right,
that would be the only hesitation I have to
I
limiting
mean,
the number.
as far as junk vehicles, that's an easy enough to set a limit to, cause like if I have to, I can scrap it. Before I'm ready to get rid of it. Personal junk vehicles that I use as a dumpster, like Brandon helped elaborate on before. Those are easy enough to limit to a couple.
Yeah.
But as far as customer vehicles in the intake and also it's hard to, I can't make a customer come pick their car up when it's
Right.
done. I mean, I can call them and let them know it's done, but until they come and pay, it's hard to. I mean, sometimes they go on vacation, leave it, and you have other jobs come in too, so.
and I'm not suggesting that 2 or 3 is
Yeah.
the right number, I think, you know.
But I do
you
wanna-
need to tell us essentially what works for you.
What's the limit on Great Northern Motor Works? The number of vehicles they can apply there? Is it in their permit? Would that be a good rule?
It's been there.
Well, how about Lee Manx right here?
Yeah, no.
How many can you fit on your property? Like, how many could you
I
actually?
could fit hundreds.
Hundreds of. That's not the right answer.
Not a good question. If it makes you feel better, he's super OCD, so he likes it all nice and organized and clean looking.
Maybe we could cut to the chase rather than looking to sling mud. Okay, everybody. I had 2 calls, only 2 calls on the notices we send out. Both praising you and saying that you were level-headed and worked with them whenever they needed it. But they were asking if maybe you could just limit the vehicles that are out in the front lawn in the front of the place. So.
So limit what's visible,
What's that?
you mean keep a limit on what's visible out front?
Right, that's.
I was,
biggest
Mr.
concern.
I'm sorry, Chip. But Mr. Hatch, in the largest blacked out area in the sketch,
Out back, yeah.
yeah, are vehicles that are parked there visible at all from Main Street?
If you're super rubbernecking, you might be able to see a couple of them. But like, so where it comes out behind you can only see a glimpse between the garage and the house, and you can only see a glimpse coming through to the left of the house on Main Street. It's
Now-
not,
I guess those vehicles in that place would be visible from Newton Road, is that?
no, there's enough tree coverage that you can't see up through.
Oh,
I had a question about, you always seem to have cars out front along the road. They don't say for sale, but I assume they are for sale.
So like I had my white Suburban parked out there over the weekend and I had a blue Ram pickup of mine parked out there.
Oh.
Just trying to get rid of some vehicles so I don't have as many sitting there.
So you don't.
They're both my personal vehicles that if someone was willing to buy, I would sell it, but then I can only drive so many vehicles, so. And I know vehicles on my property is one of the issues, so trying to make space. Cause like I said, I think I have 6 registered vehicles right now.
So you're not selling. you don't have-
My business is not to sell vehicles, no.
So you're applying just for the automobile repair, not the sales.
Correct.
And I mentioned to you last time I was in the hallway that, you know, the thing about having designated areas where the cars will be, we've had in the past, and this isn't, and one thing I could say is that if we give the permit, it's for the land. You could sell it tomorrow to somebody who's gonna just put a bunch of junk there. And in the past, when we've done one of the old places for the planning board, some of them have turned into junkyards and caused a lot of trouble with their neighbors, so that's why it's good that we want to keep it sort of neat and compact. And so I like that we designated these areas for putting vehicles and the only thing I think that we would need, though, as part of the approval is to locate, when we need to locate those, have the CEO go out and measure where those are relative to the road or pavement sideline or whatever. So it's a defined areas, whatever it is, 20 by 50 or whatever that area is, that's the black in the area. Just so you know, and everyone knows, like, so if somebody complains and says there's cars there, you can say, well, this area was designated for, parking vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what we have to do, we can. It's well within the boundary lines anyway, so that shouldn't be an issue there.
Just so we know where it is.
Yeah. But that's funny that you bring up the fact that the permit sticks with the land. Because this property was already permitted once by the town of Readfield, and now I'm going through this whole process all over again.
Well, it didn't get this permit that we're talking about now. It was something a bit different than that, and that was whatever.
State inspection.
State inspection station is the same thing.
Which is the repair shop.
It wasn't licensed as a repair shop, and it didn't go through this process, and I don't wanna go back and
I mean,
unravel. all
I'm not trying, I'm just,
And that particular permit, is not a site review permit, which is what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
And so, Dana, I wanted to get back to your question. I don't know what the domain property is a different thing. It's very circumstance specific. And I don't have that permit here in front of me.
Okay.
It was, we can talk about that, but I don't think it's a good example to base, a running business like this on, because it's not that, it's something different. And,
First of all, where in the LOU do we have the authority to dictate the number of cars that you can store as part of a business? How is that defined? I'm just curious.
there are several different places in the LUO where potentially you would be, you could impose that kind of a limit. One of the things is, from a visual perspective, there is something that talks about how any kind of storage associated with the business needs to be screened or somehow not visible to the public and to the butters. And that could be, a variety of things. It could be that, a fence is built, or it's behind the garage, or there's a limitation on numbers. So it could take a number of different.
I just asked because I take my vehicle to Great Northern and that parking lot's quite frequently full. So I mean, I don't think we're asking.
I have another question. So what is the definition of storage? Because I don't feel like I store any vehicles. So what is by definition storage?
There is a definition in the LUO, but it would be storage of anything associated with the business.
But is it, but
Is it for
it,
a certain time, or is it like? Because if they're having a time.
because if they're not, none of the vehicles that I consider I'm storing stay there that long, like I fill them up with junk metal and I get rid of them, so. It's
No,
not-
I understand that.
Cars
And
are only there for.
so it, I think that, your situation, is different, than other situations, might be, particularly with regard to storing cars. It sounds like, you only have one junk vehicle there in all likelihood, and that gets taken away at some point in time. And that the bulk of the others are vehicles that are awaiting pickup. And it doesn't sound like there are that many of them, or vehicles that have been dropped off for work. That hasn't been accomplished yet, is that right? So
Yes.
kind of three categories.
Right, and if the vehicles you see are rotating, they're always different. Or the plan is that they rotate in and out. So obviously, if they're just sitting there, I'm not making money off them anyway, so
Yeah.
that doesn't benefit me for them to sit there.
Planning board, Henry.
I think it's great. I commend you for starting this up. I think it's fantastic. Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I think it's something that's needed. I also think, I just wanted to, would you just answer a couple of questions, or talk a little bit about how you plan on like managing the waste, or, you know, because there was quite a lot of
So-
waste, and I just don't want you to,
So as far as,
that could be complicated with like lots of tires or whatever.
so the tires I take to the dump regularly, I can't stand the sight of junk tires. If I have usable tires, I'll try to help out friends or people that I know that have a tire. If they're not junk, I'll give them away to people that can use them. Waste oil, I have a guy that takes that and burns it in Monmouth, so you have that to get rid of. As far as junk metal, that's where it goes in a junk car out back. When it's full, I haul it to Clark's and get rid of that. The trash, I haul it to the transfer station.
Okay, so nothing extraordinary.
No,
Keep up with it.
I don't even plan on having a dumpster put in because I can't stand the sight of trash, so I'm not gonna have it.
It's a good answer. Good answer. Great. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I will just add my opinion about the number of cars. I think you explained it well. I think I understand what's, you know, what the model would be. I think the location, I know where your property is. I think the location lends itself pretty naturally to natural screening. So unless you got a lot right on the street, I don't think there's a huge concern for any kind of visual appearance. I would discourage the board from putting any conditions on it for any of those reasons.
Thank you.
Others?
I didn't understand what Henry just said with the discouraging that would mean.
Screening,
Oh, okay. But not.
you can't see any of this stuff. Unless it's dark.
No, I can't see behind your house. I can see a little bit of it.
If you're looking behind my house while you're driving to get that glimpse, you're severely
You
distracted.
got a
driving.
problem.
Be a customer.
I don't do autoplay.
That's true.
Except, so we still have no one who wants to provide comment. Is that correct?
No, not for this.
You don't
It's like
see
we
any-
only have Jerry online, and I'm sure he's here for fairgrounds.
Yeah, okay. Board members, any other questions for Mr. Hatch?
Just so I have it clear in my own head, in the sketch,
Yeah,
the two smaller areas where cars will be parked, and how many can be parked, could be parked in those areas? If you didn't have a restriction, how many?
well, so if I really needed to, I can put 4 beside the house in that small area. In that blacked out area to the right, I mean, as far as I can go, I try to keep them back away from the road just because I don't like them up by the road, especially if they're customer vehicles, but I could probably line up 15 from the corner of the garage to the roadway if I needed to.
And
It's plenty of distance wise, so as far as how many,
We would just like to throw in that his OCD will not allow him to put 15 vehicles
Right.
there.
like, I mean, if it gets to that point, I guess I'll be delivering them to the customers' houses myself, so I can easily put 10 there and still keep them away from the road.
it looks, according to the sketch, looks like on the left, next to the existing house, it's 97 feet. Before you could, no,
Yeah, I believe that's what I had when I measured it. I had a little measure wheel that I used.
and on the right-hand side, the area to the right of that, 101 feet, is that what it says?
I can't read it either, 100 and. Which that don't make sense, because it's 140 feet from the front of the garage over.
To the road.
From the front of the garage to the road is 140 feet. I think that it's 107 feet or 108 feet from that roadway to my corner pin. So if you're looking at this
Yeah.
thing, you've got a line that comes over here. that goes around my neighbor's property, so it's 108 feet back to his corner pin and my corner pin, and then it goes over to the Newton Road from there.
So that area that you blacked out is about. It's a bit less than half. Of 140, is that right?
Probably, yes. I didn't take measurements,
Yeah,
I just guessed at what I had sitting there for vehicles that night that I drew it, actually.
but you're comfortable that those areas that you blacked out, those are the areas where you.
That I primarily try to park the vehicles, yes.
And you would be comfortable with a permit saying that those are the designated areas where you've indicated vehicles will be stored?
I guess, but it'd be nice if we had a little bit of gray area, because I mean, the whole front is driveway and parking, but I mean, it's all. And I can't control where people park it, so I'm constantly moving stuff around anyways, so I mean, I don't know how strict you guys are
No,
about,
I understand.
so,
It's a no story.
right, you know.
Questions for Mr. Hatch? Thank you very much. I take the motion to close the hearing. For a second. Discussion. All those in favor? Board members,
So what is? These blacked out areas aren't. We don't have. Measurements of where they are, so would it be okay to improve what he's done here, but ask that. The CEO go out and measure with him, like where these areas are, so they can be sort of located on. In the future, if somebody complains about cars being blocked or whatever, you can say that this is designated by the planning board. Because it's hard to judge where this is exactly. Yeah.
Chip, what do you,
So what you tell me to do?
I don't really see, we're talking about the village zone. Where businesses can, a business of this nature is allowed. I don't see why we're micromanaging it. I think we can require that the cars, any cars that are kept beyond temporary parking, be kept a certain number of feet back from roads. That I understand, but beyond that, I don't understand why we're putting limits. Don't understand.
I concur.
yeah, I think the reason the issue was raised, but Jack was speculating that, there may be people who are concerned with the placement of vehicles, and if there was a specific location that would make it easier to explain, but I understand the thing. Another thing that we could do theoretically would be to, to use this sketch map and just approximate that, the generally storage of vehicles would happen in these areas, but Mr. Hatch raised the issue of there being a lot of other parking area that's not in those blacked out areas that could be used under some circumstances for parking vehicles occasionally. Did I get that correct?
Pretty much, yes.
We could talk about it in approximate terms and leave some leeway for that.
I mean, ultimately, I want people to want to pull in the dooryard, so I don't want it to look like a mess. I don't want it to be unorganized. I don't want it to turn people away. So I'm gonna try to keep it as neat and as appealing as possible, and stuff that is an eyesore is gonna be parked where it can't be seen to be an eyesore.
So I'll be the one that's enforcing this. I think that he's provided a map that gives us an approximation where these vehicles should be. I'll be taking the calls, so people call in or something, and at that point, I'd be go out and checking it out. I'm assuming that he'll be amicable to me checking it out and adjusting it, so he's always been very good. Every time I've gone over there and said, hey, Zach, come on, he cleans it up. So, you know, I think you got a good footprint there. It's something I could work with in enforcing, so I'll just put that out there.
But I think the big fear is like, don't turn it into a used car lot, which we don't think you're gonna do that, don't turn it into a junkyard. Right?
Yeah.
All people burn up.
I've already spoke with a bunch of my friends and
Yeah.
because biggest thing is people don't understand the difference of my toys and their personal vehicles,
Yeah.
so I've already told all my friends to cut that out.
Other thoughts about this planning board members?
I agree, I agree not to put a limit on it in this case, I think, like I said earlier, I think the property's natural layout lends itself well in the additional screening issues there. I mean, I agree with sort of Chip and Dana on this, and everybody here, I mean, I think it's, if you wanted to sort of just say in general accordance with the site plan that was provided, I think that's more than enough. I mean, that's what your business footprint is, and let you manage the rest of it.
Appreciate it.
Yourself. You know, if it becomes an issue, which it won't, but if it did, you know, I'm sure the town will hear about it, and, you know, people are funny like that, but, you know, we'll deal with that at that time. Which it won't be.
Makes sense.
Others, anything further?
We would be approving the application based on the amended application, including the revised site plan. That vehicle, part of business, generally limited to the areas on this map, but just generally. You say somebody wants to go, but no one's gonna walk that map.
Correct.
In your application, I was thinking that you may have said something in here about the numbers of vehicles. Was there anything in the application form where you?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think that.
because, if you did include some numbers, any approval, you kind of bound by what you included in the application.
I don't think I
itself.
did.
So it would be good if we knew that if there was something in here. I'm not seeing it.
There's no
I don't
numbers.
remember, I don't remember ever.
I may have read it in minutes from last time. There was some.
I know we talked about it the last meeting, but I don't think there's a.
Yeah. All right. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application as amended by the revised site plan. In that, vehicles that are part of the business, or be working on for business, generally parked in the designated areas of the site plan.
Second,
And second,
any further discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and.
Thank you.
Likewise. Oh, good to go now.
We'll walk.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Yeah. See you guys.
Did I say standards conditions?
Yes,
Shouldn't
you
say standard.
did.
It is.
Someone needs this.
We should include it.
You'll say.
It does, it would have.
What?
Okay, second item, here, Josh.
Yeah.
Please, Mike. This is, Josh Fournier of One Retreat Service, and we're looking at the application tonight for completeness. And if you could give us a brief summary of what you included in the application and, something about the business, and then the planning board has some questions.
Okay. My name is Josh Fournier. I started my business in 2015 in Monmouth. I purchased the land up here on the corner of 17 and 135 in February of 2020. And I started cleaning the place up. It was a little rundown, to say the least, anyways. And it was probably about 6 months or so before we started moving any equipment over from Monmouth to there. And just slowly, piece by piece, been cleaning it up. We offer pretty much anything to do with trees except for large scale, like clear cuts or stuff like that. It's mostly managing trees on private property, power line, you know, stuff like that. We sell firewood there. It's mostly just to keep up with it so it doesn't build, is how I'll say it. I opened the firewood business so that there's somewhere to go with all the material that we have to get rid of. And we do a little bit of plowing. That's about it for the business side of it. So it's just tree removal and pruning and firewood.
So is the wood that's stored on site behind there all for firewood?
It is. There's pine logs there as well. We don't keep any of the hemlock. It's not worth keeping. Any of the hardwood is some of it's for grade logs, which we store there until there's enough for a load when we move it over to whoever's buying that type of wood. So there are pine logs and hardwood logs. It's a mix. But probably the wood sitting there is 75% firewood. Yeah. And the firewood side of it probably makes up for 15-20% of my business. Yeah.
So your equipment, for tree service and, you know, trucks and whatever
Yeah,
else you have.
a lot of large trucks.
That's, this property, that's where you keep the.
Yeah, I store most of it in underneath that barn. I don't know if it's drier, but keeps the snow off of it. Most of it's parked in there, and then occasionally we park trucks outside, depends on what there's for room.
And so other activity that happens at the site, you cut firewood there,
Yeah, so we process it. It comes in log lengths, you know, 4 feet to 25 feet long, and then we put it on our processor, process it into heating fuel for homes. And then we store some for seasoned, let it dry, so that we have wood for this time of year for people. So we dry it and we turn it into wood, into firewood.
so any other, activities on the site itself, you store your equipment.
Store vehicles there. We work on vehicles there, on our own vehicles, nothing like Zach does, you know, we're not doing it for hire. Just keeping up with our stuff. And same idea, anything out of those trucks. I've got family members with waste oil furnaces, so everything coming out of the trucks gets reused somewhere else and is burnt. The tires, there was an overwhelming amount of tires when I got there, so I've been bringing them to BDS in Fairfield. I got them away from the road and put them out back beside the firewood bin, and it costs quite a bit of money to bring them up there, so I've been picking away at it. Money and time, I guess. And really, we don't produce any other waste that's not organic. Everything else is sawdust, really. A little bit of sawdust that comes off of the conveyor. Most of the time, homeowners stop in and ask if they can have it. We give it to them.
How many cord of firewood do you anticipate, kind of average?
When I started the firewood, I did like 50 to 75 cord by hand. And now we're doing almost 300 now.
Okay.
And that was 10 years ago. So I'm not pushing it. Like I said, it's really just a way to get rid of the stuff coming in. It gives me a little extra, you know, revenue coming in, and it makes it so the pile's not massive and rotting, and then I have another problem that doesn't make money.
Yeah, so you're thinking about the same, like about.
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably stay on that same growth. Maybe I'll get to 500 cord, but it also takes away from the tree service side, which.
You hire more people if you.
Exactly, yeah. Good luck doing that, yeah. Yeah,
Thanks.
Any other questions? Planning board members?
You're adding a second driveway to that, is that, are you going correctly, you gonna do a curb cut, or?
yeah, so originally in 21, I applied for my house driveway off of Stanley. And I applied for a second one, an agricultural driveway for that cornfield that I have on 135. DOT approved both, and they've been using that to get the corn in and out. And we're having a little bit of issues getting out onto 17 sometimes in the morning. The traffic's rough, and most of our work just we're always headed uphill. We're either heading back to Winthrop or Monmouth or Augusta or Manchester. You know, it's versus there's not a lot of work heading out towards Mount Vernon or Fayette. So it just we're always going uphill with the big trucks, slows traffic.
Yeah,
So I'd like to connect that road that I have the permit for down to the shop. That way we can get out on the 135, traffic slower, it's a lot safer. We're not gonna cause an accident. As it is now, it's not an all day problem, but when we leave for work in the morning, that's when it's the worst.
You plan on, keeping the shield, the barrier that you have there? I don't know what you call it, lean-to building.
Yeah, the pole barn. The big white barn there. Yeah, I'm working on,
That's the metal.
that's the metal barn, it's a 100 by 300 foot building, yeah. Yeah, I've been fixing it up slowly, and I'm gonna keep it there for the time being, maybe long term I'll replace that. You know, it needs a lot of work, but I've been working on it. So I'm hoping I can save it, it's a lot of good dry storage, it blocks everything that we're doing in there. You know, for the same reason as anybody driving by, I mean. Compared to when you come down that hill till now, what you see is a 500% difference, you know. There was 2 dilapidated buildings there, and I got rid of both of those, the tires, I think they took out like 15 junk vehicles, and we hauled them out of there, he wasn't gonna move them. We brought him to his location, all the farm equipment, and it was waist high with dead cows and manure.
Is this property where the cows always got out?
Yeah.
The cows would get out on the road sometimes.
Yeah.
that was kind of a hardship to the town.
Yeah.
If I may add one fact, that hasn't been brought up, we should have, is that he's moving to Readfield, he's building a house over on the edge of it, so he'll be looking down on this business the whole time, so.
Yeah, I'm just through the woods, I can see enough through there. I bought the next piece going down towards the mill as well, that lower field from Larry Mace. And yeah, we bought it to turn it into a homestead. So my wife and I rent that piece of property back to the business.
I like the answer about the road, the driveway, I thought that was good.
Yeah, thank you.
That's makes a lot of sense.
That's an honest answer.
Was there a sketch plan included? In your application? I'm looking around.
While you're looking, maybe I'll ask another question. I was just thinking, what are your concerns about, do you have any concerns about, like, thinking about the future, not the moment now, but like growth through, say, this application, the business style that you're thinking in your head? Right, and other than the one you have identified about traffic safety, do you have other concerns or other things that you're thinking about for the future that we may want to really kind of think about now? Hard to know, but
No, I don't see the business interfering any other way other than safety. At least on that spot, I'm not conducting a ton of business there. My business is a service, so I'm leaving there.
yeah, so it's a way to bring product back.
Yeah, it's a holding yard, really, it's just somewhere where I can store stuff when it's not actively being used.
How often are your pickups for like the logs? Is that daily or is it?
Yeah, that's pretty daily, yeah, yeah, we bring. We haul most everything to McGee's pits. And a couple other guys that have pits, we bring them around there, so when we're bringing it back, it's just the product that we're keeping usually. So we leave once in the morning and then we don't come in and out all day until we're done, so we're not, we purchase some firewood if I try to keep the same customers, so if I'm not cutting enough tree work wood, I might buy 100 cord, or I might buy 50 cord, but it's not, I don't know if you guys know what Kevin Haas is, and he buys 5,000 cord, there's constantly trucks rolling in and out. I don't want to do that with the firewood, that's not where I'm heading with it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and other than that, nobody else is bringing anything to sell us, so it's really just my trucks in and out every day.
So in your application, you talk about that there's a 2.5 acre area that's rented to Fournier's tree service.
Yeah. So that's that, so I've separated myself from the business. My wife and I rent that to Fournier's Tree Service LLC. So the piece that's in question is a 41 acre piece. So 2 acres of that is really what the business, 2.5 is what the business is actually using. The rest is I think it's in tree growth, and what I've been working on is saving all the rock maple trees for maple syrup. And then the rest of it is agricultural. They grow, I let a farmer grow corn there, and I keep up with the pastures. Maybe someday if I don't want to say it, but if I ever want cows there. It seems like a sore subject.
Yeah.
But that's what the rest of that land is going for. And I also wrote on there as well that I didn't agree with the natural resource based zoning for the entirety of the property. I don't know if this is a meeting to talk about that or not, but or how I would bring that up, but.
So you're just talking about 2.5 acres of the business.
Yeah, and really for the natural resource based, I kind of fit under lumber, I guess, or sale of wood.
Well, that's, yeah, natural resource based industry is not it's not a zoning designation. It's a one of the uses that could be permitted in the zone that you're in.
Okay,
So that property is actually in 2 zones. It's in rural residential and rural.
yeah,
And one of the things I was looking for was the 2.5 acres that you're talking about.
yeah,
I don't find anything, maybe it's in here and I'm just not seeing it, but something that shows specifically where that 2.5 acres is on your larger property, because it sounds like that would be the piece that we would be approving for use as a natural resource based industry and not the rest of it.
yeah, I'm not sure if on the map that I'd sketched out and I handed in on that permit application.
Yeah, is this the one that you're? You have, this one shows the barn.
Yes, that is the one. I didn't sketch out the outline of it. A lot of that is really steep and thing going down
Yeah,
there.
yeah, there's a steep slope.
So none of that can be used. I picture that line where that bank drops off as the lower line, and then to the back of where that firewood bin is used to be an old silage bin. That's really the backside of what I can actually use there. The rest of it's just very steep and rocky old
Yeah,
farmland.
Pretty much just all that flat area.
That flat area that, yeah, Everett Mace filled it in years ago. It's the same space that they use.
I think it makes sense to only apply for what you want.
Right.
So if you want to keep the other part of the property.
If I don't want
You're
the
not
rest
gonna
of
use
it,
that for this purpose,
then don't zone it. Yeah.
Don't apply, just keep it to what you want, so if it's 2.5 acre.
For that area.
Fall under that. Yeah.
You can see.
Yeah.
so I do think it would be helpful to have it on your sketch, what piece, the
Yeah.
2.5 acre piece that we're talking about. And generally where that is in relation to the rest of the property, because that's what we would be looking at specifically
Okay,
for approving your business, you know, on that.
gotcha.
Is the description the same as what you leased to Warrior Tree Service? That was, as that described, the.
Of what,
2.5 acres?
of what can be done there, you mean?
No, about where it's located. 2.5 acres.
No, there's no restriction in the lease agreement between my wife and I and the business of where the business can and can't go. There's nothing there in writing, for the agreement. It'd be one of those things where if I ever sold it, that would be when the issue is, and, or the sketch that I give you of where I'm operating in would have to be what would hold.
So have you seen the zoning map online? It shows where, what piece of property is rural residential and yeah, you know, like that. I think the rural residential would be gray and residential.
Yeah, so everything would be in gray.
Yeah, so that's the question. How much of this is
Yeah.
gonna be there?
All of it. In that corner.
So it's entirely within rural residential.
The 2.5 acres.
But that's what it sounds like, but. Chip, have you looked at this issue?
I just was looking at it to make sure it was in the wetlands.
Yeah. Well, I do think it would be helpful to have, you know, some kind of a. If you took one of the existing maps and just indicated on it for us.
Yeah.
You know, where the business would be located, that would be useful.
Okay. Would you like that now?
I don't have it right now.
Okay.
So would you,
I would also suggest, unless I'm missing it either as well, maybe also the other driveway.
Yeah.
Put the drive, you know, put the, what you're suggesting.
Add that driveway in
Yeah,
as well.
add the driveway to the
Okay.
map for the agricultural
Gotcha.
entrance, like the future. So it's very clear where that goes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And no, it's residential.
No, it's not residential.
I mean,
It's
rural,
rural.
I'm sorry.
That's true of a lot of
The map,
Um,
the map that I have there has that as yellow for the whole property. It didn't,
I think it should be right. What's a new property?
yeah, right here, it's not available. On the website, here's the, yeah, was the room.
I'm on the town. Zoning map, so maybe.
yeah. Well, I mean, you know, for this purpose. In a practical sense, it's not gonna make a difference because both of those phones would accommodate this.
Yeah.
So it, you know, it,
It's more just for record.
Thank you.
okay, other questions for Mr. Fournier, planning board? Again, we're looking at this for completeness tonight.
I'm just looking at the abutters list and looking at the parcel numbers. I'm trying to make sense of it with the parcel numbers on the plan. It's a little bit confusing.
In what way, Don, what are you looking at
Okay,
specifically?
so your parcel, what's your parcel number? It shows on here
So my parcel number is,
14.
nope, 18, 16, and 14 are the three that I own. The one that in question is 016.
Okay. So when I'm looking at this list of abutters, it looks like. The owner, so it's for 18, it looks like it's Glen Ray, on that word. 16, I was looking at Steve Borrego. Looking on page 15 of the.
Where it says butters coordinating.
Yeah.
I use the tool that's on CAI maps, tax maps we use, and just picture 100 foot. And it tells you everybody with their addresses and names and everything in the report. And it leaves out ones that don't have buildings.
So, Josh, you said you own 3 parcels, and those are 14,
16 and 18.
14, 16, and 18, okay. So you're looking, Don, at
Yeah, I think it's different. The numbers don't line up.
like,
Like,
Steve
everything-
Work table, it's
Yeah.
136.16, is that one that you're looking at?
Yeah, which is that white rectangle that's in the corner of 18?
Yeah.
I think that's.
Yeah. It's
That long triangle.
Yeah, so like, it's not here, that white rectangle there, is that what table is?
No, I think that's the gentleman on the corner of 135.
Four paper will be that little triangle.
He'd be that little triangle sliver.
Oh, okay.
With no number, I think that's four paper.
At the top.
15, right? No, 18, not half, let's just say. Shift it down, yeah, about 15, right, then that's. That's I'll review that.
So you look at that.
I'll
Chip,
review
make
that.
sure
before I
you're-
do this.
This says that 18 is plenty grand. But,
No, 18 would be me.
this,
Yeah, the butters list is kind of.
Rerun it. I'll straighten it out,
All the names are right. I think it's just the lot numbers there.
don't worry, sir.
I didn't when I.
Okay, so Chip will clean that up.
I will.
Okay. Um. Other questions, you know, at some point, you know, we will talk about, you know, the issue of the sign that's come up before. But for tonight, we're looking at your application primarily to make sure that you have all the information that is required. So we're looking at it for completeness only, and then we will hold a public hearing, and we will talk about the substance of it, we'll deliberate, and at that point, you know, we can have some conversation about the sign if we haven't.
Okay.
so I'll make a motion to find the application complete. Waive the public hearing, notify butters, waive the site visit. And one condition would be to pay the site plan, the approximate location of your business and driveways.
Sure.
It's a motion, looking for a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay. So, Josh, we found your application complete, it will go on a future agenda, I'm assuming probably for our next meeting, which is the 22nd. And, on that date, we would hold a public hearing. I don't know if there are any members of the public, who have any comments about your proposal or not. It's, frequently there are not people who are looking to comment. But we do have a legal obligation to hold a public hearing, so we'll do
Sure.
that and then we'll discuss it.
Okay.
Okay.
All
So
right.
thank you very much for
Yeah.
putting this together.
You got
The information was helpful.
It's good. Nice to meet you guys. I haven't met you already.
Likewise. Thanks, Josh.
I don't see it.
Okay, and our third application tonight is the Readfield Fairground project. Again, we're looking at this for completeness tonight. Hey, Eric.
Hi, thanks for entertaining our application. I'll just go through a project summary, some key project elements, and just some key considerations that I see that are, I think, relevant to the overall picture. Most of you are aware of this. It's been a town meeting vote twice, and has generated some press and all of that. We're in the middle of fundraising for the project, and it is it's a big project. So I'll just say that the community park that's being proposed is an expansion of an existing use on the fairgrounds property at Church Road. And it's primarily earthwork and drainage. So there are some peripheral things, accessory structures related to it, but the big impacts really are the drainage work, the earthwork, cut and fill, and then also the paving for the basketball court that would be installed, as well as the paving of the parking lot that exists. And I guess I should say that paving for the parking lot is accompanied with a small expansion of the existing footprint. But the recreational components of this include a softball field that is intended to be, roughly equivalent to the quality and function of the baseball field that's there currently. We also will be looking at the ability to have multiple sports in an area that exists in between the existing baseball field and the proposed softball field. So there is opportunity there for things like lacrosse and ultimate frisbee and kite flying and whatever else. But the recreational focus really is there, and those are the types of uses that will primarily be happening here, as well as community events. But the basketball court is also something that I mentioned previously, and has gotten some attention. That is being proposed near the edge of the property with the town-owned cemetery. But that basketball court is there and intended to be used for basketball, pickleball, and other hard court activities that folks might have an interest in pursuing there. Conservation and trails impacts. A lot of these are, I think, very positive for the site. We all are proposing the removal of the existing on-field parking, and so that would go away along with the access road that currently divides that field area. So those two things would be changed and returned in large part to field habitat. Some of that will, of course, be eaten up by the softball field on one side of that, but we're trying to minimize the fragmentation of the parcel by doing some of that. We also will be installing a replacement kiosk for trail and community information, also maybe programming information. And one of the biggest conservation impacts here is that part of our funding mechanism for this project involves the conservation of this property through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which effectively means that we will have state and federal oversight of what we do there. And the property will be in perpetuity established, with maybe some rare exceptions, but established as being exclusively used for outdoor recreation. So those, I think, are some of the impacts that we're talking about and some of the changes related to conservation and trails. Other amenities will include a water supply. We originally were looking exclusively at a well, but we've had discussions with the water district. And so I'd say that at this point, both of those options are still on the table. And I know that will have an impact on the overall plan, but the idea is that we will have a water supply there for things like drinking water, for cemetery plants and watering, and also for things like watering plantings at the fairgrounds property itself. So we're not talking about intensive uses. We're not talking about irrigating the fields. There's no intent to do that at this point, and I don't think it would happen in the future, and definitely not on a public system, which is available through the potentially available through the water district. Let's see, other amenities include electrical supply, and that would be to serve the well or any kind of pumping equipment related to the water. Also, Heritage Days events, community activities, lighting is not part of this. We're not planning on having field lights, right? So we're talking about things like popcorn machines, maybe a PA or something, depending on what's happening there. And then a dedicated and more attractive location for the portable toilets is part of this. We currently have one toilet there. It's off to the side, sitting in the gravel. We'd like to increase that to two and add pads so they can be properly leveled and more easily maintained, and also screened so that we're not looking at that when we first pull into the parking lot. So what we're looking to do really is to try to build a recreational facility that enhances what's already there. Key considerations for the project are the fact that we are looking at just expanding an existing use. The original project was approved on August 13th of 2013. And that project was pursued with community support and shared effort, much like this current project is being proposed and to date has been able to move forward. That project, the original piece, was looked at in potentially a phased approach. And I guess that we're at phase 2 and 3, if you look back to the 2013 documents. But in 2017, we did expand the parking lot, and that went before the planning board as well. So that was another decision point that was part of this history. The facility itself, I'm not aware of any major issues there with the recreational use that we're seeing now. Once in a while, people dump trash in the parking lot, but I don't think there's a parking lot in the state of Maine that doesn't have that happen. So we did install some waste receptacles and those types of amenities to manage the waste will be available at this facility. We have dog waste bags and things like that as well. But I just wanted to point out that we have a pretty good eye on what happens there, and we're not aware of any major issues with the existing use. There are no planned changes to existing buffer for private property. So we would be looking at cutting into the wood line near the town cemetery. The plan is to actually, even though I don't think it would be required, but to put in buffering, probably conifer or something to help minimize that basketball court from being visible. It will be, I think, 40 feet plus off the wood line, but it's fairly open. I would like to see some vegetation there to help buffer that. But point there is that we're not cutting in any direction towards existing private property. And I don't really foresee any significant impacts that aren't in the current time and type that are existing. There might be a little bit more intensity, and that would be, and I guess the big impact I see is parking and traffic. I do expect that we will have increased pretty significantly traffic, especially if we have a double-header game or multiple competing activities like a basketball game and perhaps a softball game at the same time. When we add capacity, we will add use. So I did want to be very upfront about that and the fact that I do expect that to be something we have to consider, and hopefully we've addressed it in the application. And then we have a few items of compatibility. I do believe this project is compatible with the Fairgrounds Management Plan. The town went through a fairly exhaustive process to engage stakeholder groups, including Recreation Board, Conservation Commission, Cemetery Committee, Age Friendly, and others, so that we could start off this process the second time around with a group of people that had a vested interest in seeing it happen successfully. And also in a way that had minimal impact on the community while maximizing the recreational benefits. So I think that that's a positive note. Also, the 2023 comprehensive plan update, recreation and recreational uses were very much supported in that document, and I believe this project is consistent with a comprehensive plan. Also, I believe it is consistent with currently in use. Again, we haven't had any issues there. So I'm happy to take any questions on anything in the packet or anything you think needs to be added or expanded upon.
I have a question. So, well, there's currently a service road or emergency access road to the ball field. Will that be maintained, and will there be emergency access to the other fields that you're
Yes, so yes and no, right? So the first half is that we will have emergency access. The road is being proposed, rather than going down the middle of the field. It will be moved over towards if you're looking at the field from Church Road to the left-hand side. And so that access will kind of swoop around there, kind of swing in front of the basketball court, and land more or less, I guess, center field between the two, the softball and baseball field.
And also mentioned here, there will be an impact on the wetlands, it's minimal, but how much of an impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's more than minimal. It's something that we had to be very careful about when doing our planning and design. There is existing surface drainage there it's wet most of the year. And so we will be impacting less than the threshold that would require additional state approval. But we do need to manage that water. And so the drainage plan does call for collecting the surface water through a perforated pipe system, basically under drain under the field, which is a pretty common practice. And then using sheet flow as well to orient that water. And there will be very little water coming out at the existing outflow of that wet area. It will be kind of redirected and reoriented to a really, I think, a more suitable area further away from the trail network. So there will be wetland impacts, and I guess I'd have to look to see the exact square footage, but we're aware of it, yeah.
So it doesn't, it's not enough to require an urban permit, is that?
That's correct, yeah, the design, I think it was less than 10,000 square feet, is that right, Paula? I'm trying to remember the exact threshold. Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
Anyone check the vernal pools?
Yeah, so I think we had done a site visit, multiple site visits, and the wetland mapping. And the area where we were originally considering the basketball court, which was up by the road, there were vernal pools in that area, and so the basketball court was moved to avoid any impacts on vernal pools.
Eric, speaking of the basketball court, how close is it to the closest edge of the cemetery?
I would say it's probably about 40 feet. I'd have to look at the.
See, there's a reference in here to fencing next to in the application.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a fence put up?
There will. So imagine this is a multi-use court, so we'll probably have fencing that's 8 to 10 feet tall, black vinyl coated chain link, similar to what you see at basketball courts and those type of fencing situations. So there will be fencing.
So though that court also, when it's not being used for basketball, might be used for pickleball.
Yes.
So we hope the fence will be high enough so the balls won't be going into the cemetery.
You'd have to be one hell of a pickleball player to get this thing all the way through. But yeah, no, the fencing is intended to keep the balls in play. And also, like I said, I'll find that exact distance. I don't know if I can have it tonight, but I'll make sure I have it for you the next time we talk. But I think it's about 40 feet.
Eric, just for clarification, the existing ball field that's there, the one that was developed a few years ago now, say a few years ago, it was actually. We're talking about adding the softball portion of that, the bottom part of that, and then it says on the conceptual drawing, although it's hard to see on the design drawing, whether or not there's a space between the two. Is the idea there that there's additional fields there, like you could use it for like a soccer field?
Exactly.
Right, so it's like a multi-purpose facility, is that what we're talking about?
That's the intent. So when I referred earlier to that kind of multi-use field in between those two,
Okay.
That's what we're talking about. And I think the design was established and the sizing was established such that you could fit a standard size soccer court pitch, I guess you want to call it that. Yeah, but soccer field and also things like lacrosse, football, whatever.
So I guess, what are your thoughts, or what is the thoughts about the number of spaces and parking, things like that? I mean, I'm just looking at the plan and design, and I'm thinking, I've been to many for better or worse, there's been lots of soccer games and baseball games, and sometimes they have a lot of people, and unless you have a lot of space, it's, you know, you're gonna get overflow into Church Road or other places, which may be fine temporarily, but.
Yeah, no, I believe we're looking at.
Is it larger than the current parking lot?
Yeah, it is. So, two things are happening there. One is we're expanding it, and I somewhere in here have my numbers on the actual number of parking spaces, but, I guess the two things that are happening is that the parking lot is being expanded and adding spaces. Also, it's being paved, which adds a great deal of efficiency. And we have had times, on rare occasion where we've seen overflow with the existing single ball field, trails, and other uses. So the trails network will be staying the same, but more or less. But the doubling of the basket of the ball field capacity is really the biggest impact. I don't know if we'll see organized outdoor basketball happening, so I don't think that's going to be a real issue. If there's a need, we could maybe schedule an adult league or something outside of fall, or spring, excuse me, baseball games, things like that. But the striping of the lot will add capacity. So I think we were looking at somewhere north of 80 spaces plus with the existing plan for the sidewalk on Church Road. There'll be another 18 or 20 spaces added with that too. So not that we want to count on it, but I think when you're talking about proximity in a recreational facility like this, it wouldn't be unusual for someone to walk a quarter mile, or if they're able, of course. And the parking does include handicap spaces as well. So yeah, and I'll try to find that number on the parking while you're.
Another question related to the cemetery is, does this project in any way prohibit or cause complications for, say, future expansion of that cemetery or any other kind of, what is the town's thoughts on that? Because it seems like it's pretty compact down. There's still a lot of land that the town owns to the north of this project area, but is that true? And is that available, that spot, for future growth of the cemetery if necessary?
Yeah, so there's a stone, or there's a stone wall, and there's some boundaries there, but basically the existing lot that is the cemetery lot, this project doesn't encroach upon that lot. The cemetery was expanded between 10 and 15 years ago, I'd say. And there's a new annex on the backside, and that's down kind of lower as you get towards the white area. That cemetery is basically maxed out. There's no room for expansion. We have, I think, maybe 100 or so cremain plots down there, and maybe some full burials. But that area is where we would expand, and once that annex, they call it, once that's full, we're full. We'll be looking at other locations for cemetery.
I don't know that it makes any practical difference right now, but one of the things that I was thinking about as I was looking at this was procedurally and administratively, should we be looking at it as an amendment to give more approval rather than a brand new application? And I didn't really have, I was away last week, so I didn't really look at that, but that was a question that came up. And I don't think it will make a huge amount of difference in terms of how we approach this and the discussions we have about it, but it may be more appropriate to treat it that way than a brand new standalone application.
I have a question about the review criteria, the financial and technical feasibility. So that the board has an obligation to ensure that they have adequate financial resources to construct and maintain the proposed improvements, and also to ensure that they take into account the effects of inflation. So based upon my understanding of the budget, it's $1 million, right? And there's a half, if I remember correctly, I was reading about some stuff there. Like, there's a $500,000 grant that's already been provided to us, or no?
It's in process. So that's the Land and Water Conservation Fund. That's the money that will lock up the property for recreational use in perpetuity. So we have, are you looking for like an answer of the funding, or just a?
Well, like, do we have a fund? I don't think that we've raised the funds, the $1 million quite yet. And I don't see anything in the estimate where we accounted for maintenance of the facility after.
Yeah, sure. So we actually currently maintain the fairgrounds property, so this would be just an incremental addition to that. So the maintenance would be fairly modest, and my intent, I think, is that we would have additional support from volunteers, just like we have all along with keeping those fields, in good shape. But we haven't received the full funding for the project. What we are looking at is that 500,000. We're looking at a $25,000 gift from Kennebec Savings Bank. We have probably $10,000 in fundraising so far from private entities and individuals. Lots of ongoing activities. A bulk of the remainder of that is the actual earthwork that would need to happen, and that's where the National Guard comes in. We have applied for a IRT, which is an innovative readiness training program, and the intent is the National Guard will be doing the majority of that heavy lifting with the earthwork, cut, fill, all that, and we expect that's going to be around $350,000 worth of value, and so the cost is actual dollar cost, but those pieces are going to be coming in part with cash, but also in part with in-kind
I think
donations.
if I remember the warrant correctly, the last election was this was presented to the residents, there was gonna be no cost to them. It was gonna be all from donations and contributions. But that's not correct for the maintenance piece of it, because then the town's gonna pick up the maintenance to it. Is that right?
Well, I think it was presented as no cost for the construction of the project. I think that we were very careful in that language and that wording. It's expected when we have municipal property that we take care of it. So I don't believe that was the intent. And certainly we did make an effort to portray this as no cost for the construction of the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like the funds have not been raised, and that's one of the criteria. And also to take into account the effects of inflation, so the rate of inflation for construction in the state remains 8% right now. And this is from the cost estimates from February. How many years before we go? It's probably, for every year we delay, it's another 800. It's another $80,000 to $100,000 in costs that need to be increased and raised.
Sure, yeah, so we were aware of the construction schedule, and the numbers, the estimates we have are for FY25. So we did plan ahead, and those numbers do reflect a contingency as well as inflation up through next year. So we expect construction may start next year and be finished in 2026. So
I saw that you had a construction schedule, but you don't get all the money. What would you do?
Well, there's two things we could do. We would either scale back the project, and that's something we would need to talk with the planning board about. Or we would need to delay the construction. Those are two options.
Eric, for the additional maintenance on the facility, it's not gonna be free to maintain it. Is that gonna be on the warrant, where we're gonna raise funds for incremental cost?
Sure, just like every other town property, we do have costs for maintenance that are included on the warrant.
But will it be buried in another line, or will it be explicitly stated as a warrant?
So the town meeting warrant instructions so that we look at things departmentally. So it would be included with the maintenance department. And I again will repeat that the incremental cost of this is not great because we'll be maintaining a moon ball field.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eric, the national, the hope for use by the National Guard or were they involved also in the 2013 expansion?
No, they weren't, and that's the other piece of this. It was done by local contractors. And so the hope is that if the National Guard does not come through, which I'm fairly certain they will, but if they don't, the option is to try to work with local contractors, much like we did before. The difference being a question of magnitude, this is a much more involved project with a lot more earth moving than what was done originally for that first ball field. So it would be a bigger ask, but it's an ask we'd be certainly willing to make if needed. So.
What's your response about the portable toilets?
So those are allowed. I did speak to someone from Maine Drinking Water Program. The statute allows local code enforcement to approve beyond a 7-day period. And the gentleman that was involved with the drafting of that law said the intent was that, that towns, municipalities, anybody that runs recreational facilities, soccer fields, beaches, that they would just talk to their CEO and say, hey, we're gonna make sure this thing's clean and properly maintained and removed at the end of the season and not dumped on the ground, which is a risk that you run with, the ones out in the woods by the campers and things. So that is allowed to have those temporary portable toilets there for the recreational season, which effectively is 8 months.
There's one there now, right? I mean,
There's one there now, yeah, and one at the town beach too.
it's kind of also doing by the high school quite often.
Yeah, we do have them at the high school also, yep. So I still haven't been able to find that parking lot exact number, but I will have that for you next time with the
I
exact.
found it,
I think it's 68. That we found.
68.
Okay, so
It's
68.
buried, it's a tiny font, but it's there.
Buried, okay, all right, so 68,
And you said how many on Church Road?
I think it's 18 or 20,
18.
yeah.
68, and that includes 3 handicap spots.
And I did try to find some numbers for what people recommend for ball field parking. And I couldn't find much. I'm not sure there's a standard measure because I did want to take an analytical approach to that. The one number I saw was 23, 24. And that seems kind of light for a youth sports event where you've got families coming. But I do think that we can accommodate the use that we'll anticipate on this property. And if we start seeing things change and we have issues, the town will certainly be prepared to expand if needed, much like we did back in 2017 when we saw that the lot was not meeting the current demand.
I'd recommend reaching out, if you haven't already, to the town of Manchester and seeing how they manage they have that parking lot behind the elementary school, and they have a soccer field and a baseball field there, and a softball field, and but that road, you know, what's the name of that road that's behind there?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a road behind it, it's a residential street, but people are always parked along that road.
Oh,
and
the
that
one with
parking
ice
lot-
cream and the bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right, yeah.
That's
I dropped the cone there before.
That's, but yeah. But they have a parking lot, and I'm just that's a good comparison point just to see, and they have frequent use of it for it's all, and that's entirely for youth sports, so it could be a similar, I imagine a similar comparison.
Is the emergency access road, is that paved or gravel, what is it?
That will be gravel.
So is there any way that somebody in a wheelchair could get from the parking lot and can slot down to any of the fields?
Yeah, so the two options are for them to be driven down, so they can access that. Also, the intent is much like the existing trails, that it be a hard packed 3/4 minus gravel crushed stone that won't be necessarily the smoothest thing in the world, but you can roll a wheelchair down that. And Gary Kelty would tell you that he had someone in a wheelchair go up and down the trails when they first built those to prove that how great they were, and they are great, but they do need routine maintenance, but that surface should be very similar to what we have on the existing trails.
Some say pickleball, is it going to pickleball? Is that a joke? I hope so. Sure.
No, it's legit. The plans included pickleball and basketball.
What are the neighbors? I mean, you hear a lot of complaints now that pickleball.
Well, the neighbors right next door are pretty quiet.
Yeah.
But it is a consideration. It's something that I thought about when we were putting this project together. So I think that's a not necessarily a functional thing, but maybe a policy one. If we find that we've got complaints from people either on the other side of the cemetery, or if we get complaints, we'll have to think about how we approach that. It certainly wouldn't be after hours. There will be no court lighting. So hopefully those type of things can minimize any kind of impact.
In terms of security, are there any changes proposed versus what's there now? Anything in terms of signage or gates or anything?
Not with signage that I'm aware of. We haven't really gotten to a sign schedule yet. We certainly will probably have signs. The emergency access road, much like the one that exists currently, will have some kind of a turnstile or gate or something to keep vehicles that are not supposed to be down in the fields from getting down onto the fields. So we will have access. control that's very similar to what exists currently.
What about, what is the vision for landscaping? Is it natural? I mean, we're not planning on mowing this frequently, are we, or something?
Well, so it's a mix, right? So the project, one of the key components was trying to maintain the character of the field. The field right now is on a twice annual mowing schedule, so we the areas that are not open for that aren't part of the ball field are left to grow up all summer, and we cut them in the fall. And I guess it's really only once a year, maybe twice if we need it, but we've only been doing it once lately. So we're gonna have a combination of those type of natural field areas. The ball fields will be mown similar to the way they are now. And we'll also have some ornamental plantings, but native. I guess I say ornamental, but the intent is to have a pollinator garden that will have, a multi-tiered approach with the planting so that we have things flowering at different times of year to support different kinds of insects. I think that the basketball courts in the artist's conception do show some low shrubs, things to make it a little bit less like a chain link fence. Yeah. But the idea is that we will try to minimize impacts on the existing area, make sure we have visibility to the recreational areas from the parking lot and from other areas so that people aren't obstructed from seeing their kids if they're, say, if they have kids in multiple areas, things like that. So we're trying to balance a few different things. We do have a landscape architect who's been working with us to date, Regina Leonard, and we are planning on working with her to finalize the native plant plan as well as the any shrubs, and we'll probably have a few trees go back in as well.
Other questions for Eric? Anybody?
Bleachers, no bleachers?
So right now we have low profile bleachers, and those are movable, but I expect we might see a few more sets of the low profile ones. I don't think we have plans for anything that's structural or needing to be permanently housing. We just don't have that many fans, and people like their lawn chairs too. They love their lawn chairs. Yeah, we'll probably have low profile bleachers similar to what exists now.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah.
So a motion is in order concerning completeness.
I'll make a motion to find the application complete and notify the others, schedule a public hearing, and what on site visit.
I'd encourage a site visit if you guys have the time, but.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Okay, so we'll get some distances for you for the next time, and yeah, try to clarify any of the parking situation. So, yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Eric, very much.
Ready to go.
And did you say, we had to go to the decision on whether it was amendment or a new?
I'm looking at this, but I haven't had a chance to look. I want to look at the old. And I think it does. Yeah. So I'm thinking it then. I'll get a copy of the original approval. But yes, it is, and the way the IUL is written, it becomes part of the approval. And that's the way it's presented, so. All right, we have minutes from September 20. So Jack had provided some changes in the draft, and Peter, you have also provided some edits that they weren't incorporated into the draft.
No, I haven't learned how to use that. But I think it's easy, the first, if we break this down to the first of the hatch paragraph. You can look at my email and decide if you want those changes or not. And actually, the first two are typo. One is sort of a couple missing words, and I think. And then the other thing in hatch, Jack suggested it, probably Jack's proposal is better. Concerning what the site plan should show. But we say basically the same thing, his comment in line.
Mhm.
Yeah, Angelica, if you looked at both sets of comments, and is there a way to make it work?
Yeah, actually, this, when you do the edits on the Word and then Peter adds his, like, it's pretty easy for me to correct it that way. So I don't know.
And on with respect to the FISC application minutes, other than the typo I saw of A instead of N, the rest of it could be Jack's proposal.
And that was it on yours, Stephen? Is there something else?
Well, I don't care whether you change the word home to project, but
Where was-
that's my suggestion. Under FISC, the first, right near the start of it, let's take a look.
First line, in this portion,
Yeah,
on his property, I believe.
last word of the first line. Under FISC.
Oh, whoops, I'm gonna go on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is that the owl, by the way?
Yes, the owl is back.
The owl's back.
We brought it back.
Let's see.
The only additional thing I saw, and this is very minor, but the, after the FISC piece, motion by Jack, and then Jack, you had included some modified language in the second line. And toward the end, it says, as part of this approval, the PB finds that
Which,
with, I think with is superfluous now. Take that word off. Yep. Okay, yeah. Okay, anything else on these, anybody? Now we'll take a motion.
Move the minutes as amended.
For a second,
I'll second it.
discussion. All those in favor?
Is that 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
3 abstentions. 2,
Abstain.
Don, we're,
I was,
okay, so 3
so,
abstentions.
Henry, Dawn, right, and Dana.
And Dana.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is that, thank you again, Angelica, for tracking everybody's availability and so forth, but it looks like the 29th of October is the date that most of us can be available for a workshop on LUO issues, potential revisions and so we'll plan on the 29th But I did want to ask everyone if what your schedules would allow you to do in terms of timing on that meeting. It feels like it might make sense to try to convene earlier than 6:30 if possible. But I don't know how that works for everyone, so I wanted to check. What time could everyone be here?
I'll open the bid at 4. So.
That might not work for.
Yeah.
What?
That was
would
my
work?
opening bid.
5 would be pretty doable, 4:30 would be iffy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Would 5 work for everyone?
I agree. Fine. Although I appreciate Dana's ambition. I appreciate the ambition.
I can make it work.
I could make 4:30 work, but 5 would be better, but if you vote 4:30, that's.
So 5 would be okay for everyone. Okay. Well, let's plan on 5 o'clock on the 29th.
Perfect, I'll get that on the calendar tomorrow.
Chip will start at 4.
Chip just doesn't stop.
So for that.
Do you want to try and set like a length?
It's gonna be like more than one night.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Well, you know, I think that the way, all right, let's talk about that. The way I've kind of been thinking about it is that it would be an opportunity for us to, you know, talk through some of those issues and kind of set an agenda, because clearly we're not going to be doing everything on that potential list. There's just too much. And in order to get it done in time, to get it to town meeting, we're gonna have to prioritize, make some choices about what we want to do and what we're going to set aside for another time. And, you know, and as we had talked about before, it would make some sense for, you know, for several people to, you know, to take on either some of the review work or potentially the drafting. And then we could come back together and see what we have and, you know, how we need to continue with the drafts and so forth. And what the results of the reviews were and so forth. So I am looking at this as a, you know, first effort. We won't get everything done.
Is the agenda really to start off with sort of going through that list you already sent and deciding? You know.
Yeah.
No,
I
no, we
think
don't
so.
want to do that. Yes, this is something we.
Yeah. So I think we need to think about it in terms of, you know, what's most important for us to have done for the next town meeting.
Okay.
And some of it, you know, can wait, and some of it I think is probably more important from the community's perspective.
I was looking at their schedule, like the time that they need to have the warrant completed, so there's a master schedule on there. But was it like January 18th or something?
No, it's later than that,
Yeah.
but it's.
But it is early.
It is,
Yeah.
it is early, yes,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I'm thinking the end of February possibly. Yeah, it's, you know, there's not a great deal of time. So, and there were a couple of additions to that possible list, things that people raised at the last meeting, so I could, I've not inserted those in the list yet, but I can do that and send the modified list out. They were just 2 or 3 things that people were interested in adding to it. So if there are other things, think about those, if you want to add to this list for discussion, and consider the list. And then we can talk through that at the meeting and come up with a final plan for how we're gonna approach it, basically. Yeah,
You
so,
gotta send us all with updated.
yeah, I can send an updated with those,
That'd be great.
those 2 or 3 things that are added. So we need to be able to discuss, you know, priorities, what we think needs to go forward, and we can talk about, you know, who's going to draft, who's gonna do the reviews and so forth.
I would suggest that we all read the comprehensive plan
Yeah,
before that workshop, or at least
Yeah, definitely, and you know,
It
and-
has goals, we feel objectives of the community or we put it in.
the,
So we're consistent with that.
well, there's a comprehensive plan piece on this list. And the way I pulled that list together was to take out those pieces that are A, assigned to the planning board, and B, are designated for short-term implementation, which means over the next couple of years. So, you know, we do have some time on those, but there might be some that are more important than others. You might want to pluck those out and set the others aside. But you will need to look at the comprehensive plan to get a feel for what those things are.
What's the date of the current version of the comprehensive plan? When was it last amended?
Recently.
Yeah, last
So,
year.
I don't have,
It's on the website,
oh, gosh.
but if you look at this list,
We put that novel down.
if you look at this list, I put the specific, sections and paragraphs and page numbers that you need to refer to for those things that are on the list. So you don't have to read the whole thing.
No, I just wanted to get a copy of it. I mean, that. I don't.
Are there any available in the town office?
There is one in the town office, but it belongs to the town office, so I don't know if you wanna hang out with us that long.
Because I find reading
I
a
mean-
huge document off a screen, I cannot, it doesn't.
Yeah,
Print it out.
yeah, I'm sure there's
We've got lots of
options,
pages.
and I know, yeah. So, and I think, I could be wrong, but I believe. And I'd have to look into it, but somewhere along the line, when we were doing all the comprehensive plan stuff with the select, the select board and. They had broken down the things that needed to be reviewed, like for planning board or conservation or select board.
Yeah, it's
So,
all- it's
is that
all
what you
in there.
have?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanna make sure you have
It's-
that.
I mean, there's a lot of narrative in the comprehensive
Mhm.
plan, but the crux of it is those pages that talk about strategies and policies and strategies.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I pulled out and they're on the list, so.
I was thinking, so for example, housing, we've had a lot of discussion about housing, but.
Yeah.
It'd probably be good to read the section about housing so that we know kind of the guiding light of the community.
Yep.
So we don't do something that's opposite that.
So that's all I have. Anyone else, anything?
We're coming up to the holidays next month. I know it's close in November. I know it's far away. It seems like far away, but it's not.
No.
Is there a way to, I mean, we're not conflicting, but how deep is the agenda, what's on the docket? Is there a lot of people that you know of, or is it gonna get quieter now as it usually does?
It's, well, you gotta finish up with Tacoma,
Right.
that's still probably.
Have they provided
They have
their
not
response
provided.
yet? No. Well, that ball's in their court.
And then I got a note from Frank Berniel. Asking what extra he needs to have with his application for marijuana bill.
He doesn't have an application.
You and I know that. That was my response to him. So, I mean, I don't know where that's gonna go.
Yeah, well,
Just, loose ends right now.
I was just implying, without saying it, but I'll say it, is there any possibility that it could drop to a month's meeting in November, December?
well, I think
Or maybe
we've done that
December?
pretty consistently, and tried to work in those things that need to be taken up and have
Just the holidays are really hard.
step back from, the regular schedule during
Yeah,
holidays.
just something like that, trees.
Holidays are happy.
We just get really busy around that time. so.
Yeah, I think if we could do, because we talked about the December 24th, obviously, we're not gonna do that one. The only other one I can see holiday wise would be the 26th of November, so that's 2 days before Thanksgiving. But we have a meeting scheduled for the 12th as well in November, so if we wanted to go down to one meeting then, depending on our applicant load,
Well, we can see what the
It's driven by the
workload
applicants.
looks like, but,
yeah,
and what might come in, but
yeah.
tentatively, we could think about one meeting in both November and December. Okay, we're done.
Thank you.